So moving on very quickly to our final top performer case study. That's because we normally have 5, but there are so many who could be on stage here at Mastermind 25. We thought we'd try and squeeze in one more. So please put your hands together for Nick Smith.
Hi, everybody. I'm the last one. I know you're all thinking about lunch, but I'm really pleased and honoured to be here today. It's a great journey, and there's been a lot of things that people have talked about all the successes, and I'm just glad I'm here just to tell you a little bit about mine. So I'm Nick Smith. I currently live in Harrogate, married to Jo, did that a little bit late on in life, and I have two kids now, Jensen and Brodie. I grew up in Yorkshire, in a mill town of Dewsbury, and I was one of 3 boys. I was the middle child, and I did grow up with a little bit of a middle child syndrome. And I did well at school, but for various reasons around my childhood, I had to make myself independent from my parents at a young age. So I headed off into the world, and I was motivated massively just to prove everybody wrong and that I could be a success. And I started off, first of all, I needed somewhere to live, I needed a job. So I went to be a printer. So I started as a printer on shifts. Shifts gives you better money than normal, so I looked at that. So I worked as a printer for 9 years, and then I worked hard, really worked hard. I had a lot of things that I wanted to achieve. So I ended up getting promoted to the technical department. Then I worked my way back up into production management. I eventually got a directorship at this company. And then that's a lot of things condensed into one slide. And then I gambled everything, absolutely everything, on of leaving that, walked out of that, and I bought a failing printing company that I wanted to try and turn around. And because I always wanted to try and push that boundary and try and push that threshold of what I could achieve. I was always testing myself out and trying to achieve something. I didn't quite know what I was going to achieve. I just wanted to each day do the best I could physically do. And actually, before I came on this process, I'd never heard of wealth dynamics. But then I realized when we did the test that I am a creator. And as I was working, through that time I'm working all the time, I've done a number of different things that I've tried to start off and invest in. Some of them have been successful, some of them haven't. So these are just a list of all the things I've had to go at doing. That was a little delicatessen. I was trying to invest in little houses, and this had a little shop underneath it, and it was a tatty old sandwich shop. And I thought, oh, I could do something there and make that better. So my grandma was called Lillian, so I called it Lillian's Delicatessen, and I tried to run a delicatessen whilst I was full-time employment. So I was going to cash and carry on a night and on a weekend and then in and out. So I did that. That's the company I bought, which was failing. I bought that in 2005, and then invested after I moved on from that one. I'd sold that one. I invested in another printing company called Contego. And then I bought this was a company, Salt's Catering. It was a guy who had a business that was failing in Leeds, and I helped him out. So it was really a case of he was going to lose his house, he was going to lose his job. So I went in and helped him out. So I got rid of his shops. I looked at the business part of it that was failing, and I looked at the bits that weren't failing and that were doing well, and restructured his business in order to help him, and then continued. And once I'd done that and guided and helped him, then I can step back and still work at the same time. I started Verd Energy, which is a tax-efficient EIS scheme, and that was buying solar panels. And I put as many solar panels on as many chicken farms as I could in the North Yorkshire. I did, and that's still going. But again, once the solar panels are up there, they're up there. The chicken's like a nice hot coop. The farmer likes he likes cheap energy, and the solar panels are owned by Verd Energy. And then at that point, we were being advised to put things into limited companies. So I I started my little property business to try and buy some property in there. I did actually start an app. I've invested in an app, and just one tip, I should put at the end, don't ever start an app. Not a good investment. See, some of these things, I've gained some of these things I've lost heavily in. And then a few business ones. Smith & Backer was a JV I did with a builder. And then Amber Hill Homes, which is what I do now. And then Saltbox Living, which is the new one I've done and generated this year. So previous investing in property. So I first bought my first one in 2002, and it was very simple. I had no education. I was working corporate, and I knew I had to build some wealth. I always had this in my head that I had nowhere to go. I had to survive, and I had to generate my own wealth and income. So I bought something in 2002, and I bought a little single let. I have a really mixed portfolio because I used to get it on a credit card, refurbish it, transfer the balance into a zero credit card, and then refurbish that one. So I was buying these things and just trying to do them up. I did all the mistakes though. I was doing them myself. I was working on the night in them, trying to do them up, and then just moving that credit on. I think I started that journey with about £1,000, where I got my first, and then moved it on and borrowed, and then I refinanced out. And then I had a period of time, about mid-2000s, where I went to a property show in Manchester, I think it was, and there was some shiny pennies. So I started to invest in France, which I've never made any money from, but I bought some stuff on a repayment mortgage, and gradually that will repay off. So there's some equity that will, over time, benefit, but don't make any money. Bulgaria, I just lost money, full stop, end of. That was just a shiny penny that lost money. And then Dubai, I actually bought, sounds really grand, I bought something in Dubai. I had one house that I was living in at the time, and I remortgaged it. And I think I got down to about £500 I had in the bank at that point after buying the deposit on that. But I felt it was a good place to buy. I just felt in my gut it was something I should do, and that turned out to be good. 2008, I just flipped properties then because the yields were poor, and then so I then just got into that. So I could work full time, I could buy something that I thought I could add value, and then this is where I started adding value. So everything about what I try and do is to add value, whether that's to add value in people's lives through businesses or add value in property. It's all trying to add value. So I started flipping, and I just did. I bought something I felt I could add value, developed it, and then sold it, and just that pot of money, I just tried to move on to the next one and the next one. So I built up an equity base, but had no income. So I never generated any income out of them because the small single lets that I refinanced to get the cash to buy another one, and the flips were to build up a pot, but no income coming from that. I stumbled on an essay. This was something in Cornwall that I went to, and I was going to develop it into a flip. But then when I started educating myself this year, I felt that I could turn it into a serviced accommodation, and I could use that to try and generate income. But the key part of it is I was completely uneducated. Before January 2018, I didn't even know there was education companies going on in property. I was erratic, I was unfocused. I had built up equity from my history of what I was trying to do, but I had no income at all. And I literally made every mistake in the book. Every single finger was burnt pretty much down the line it was. So the corporate job, I'll whiz through this now. So I was doing the corporate job, but felt property was a place to try and invest in. I did well in my corporate job, and the demand on my time increased and increased. By January 2018, I was working in a large PLC. I had 13 factories to look after through UK, Europe, and Asia. But I was trading my time for money. And around about that time, I had a real tragedy that happened in my life, and I realized the whole concept of time is the most precious thing. And I'd got married, I was going to get married, and I had children, and time became more and more precious. And I was just trading my time. So I was determined to make a change. January 18, I walked out of my corporate job, and I looked for the best education because I needed an income. So I came on Mastermind Accelerator and signed up immediately. I knew, sometimes you just know things, and I knew deep down that this was what I needed to do. So my strategies was to invest in high-yielding HMOs. I'm into adding value. I wanted to add value, and that's the strategy. Right place, right size, right price to convert to HMOs. I purchased existing HMOs as well because I needed some immediate income to come in. So that was definitely something I would look to do. I focused in Yorkshire. I just developed down 402 miles away from my house, and there's a lot of overnight drives down to Cornwall and back. So I thought, well, let's stay a little bit closer to home. Sub-strategy, if I found something with SA, then I would do that. I'd started to get to know SA. And then after doing Accelerator, I just realized there was a whole new toolbox of things I could play around with, and really excited to do that. So I'll whiz through some of the highlights. When I first started, I had no cash to do it, so I had to go around and beg and borrow. So I went and started asking people for money. I raised £360,000. I've also agreed a vendor finance through this year of £160,000. I've used bridging finance as well, because the times when there was a deal, I needed it, I wanted it, and I had no cash. I didn't have enough cash, so I went for bridging just to keep that cash flow and that momentum going. I sold a low-yielding single let at the same time. I needed that cash coming in to make sure that I could keep that momentum going. I also placed a second charge on an existing property because I realised, it dawned on me that I had some equity in some property. It was all tied up. But how do I get at that? I could get at that and use that. So I went and got a second charge. I had to go and ask the mortgage company if I could do it, and it wasn't easy to do, but managed to do that, so I could use that. And then crazy. So I started begging and borrowing at the start of the year, and I finished with 20 direct contacts now who are actually knocking on my door wanting to invest. So it's crazy. That's happened in 1 year. It's mental. Highlights part 2. So this is what I've done. So I bought 3 residential properties and converted them to 6 7-bed high-end HMOs. I bought another 2 existing HMOs that could get me straight into it. They can both be refurbished and increase the value. I converted a single, so I looked at my own portfolio and thought, what, is there any there I can do? And there was one. So I converted that into a 4-bed HMO. I bought a residential property and converted it to serviced accommodation. And this is where sometimes adding the value and knowing your tools. This had been on the market. I'd fallen through twice. I'd put an offer in and lost out. So I thought, oh, okay. And then it come back on the market. And what I realised was people knew it was good at serviced accommodation, but the lease was banning. So people were going through the solicitor's situation, finding out that legally they couldn't do it. So they were throwing the towel in and not buying it. So I went to the owner and sat down and said, right, the reason why you're not selling this is because no one can do serviced accommodation and people want to do it. So why don't we just go halves on changing this lease and allowing that? I knocked on the other guys' doors who were in that lease and said to them it would raise their value in their properties, and we all agreed to change the lease. So we went through the process of changing the lease. Suddenly I can buy something that I can add value to it and get a higher income, and he gets his house sold. So it's an interesting one where everybody was walking away, but seeing the value or seeing the way you can add value, and especially from the knowledge that we're learning, is something that can be really amazing. Should it click on? Stuck, everybody. All right, so I bought a commercial unit with a SIP. So I don't have a SAS, that's for the next year, but I have a SIP, so I bought a commercial unit, agreed a purchase option on a 22-bed property, and this is an interesting one as well. This thing has no license and no planning permission, and it's in Article 4, so these guys can't sell the property. There's lots of people around it wanting to buy it, but they realised, I went to them and said, you can't sell it. There's no way you can sell it because it's the wrong planning class, so I'll do that for you, I'll pay for that, I'll get that, but give me an option if I'm going to do all that work. So we've done that. I created a brand, Co-Living Properties, and that's Saltbox Living, if you've not seen it on social media. I think this is gone. Created a portfolio that can deliver twice, So the crazy thing, I've created a portfolio that can deliver twice the net income I ever earned as a corporate role. And that I never thought I'd do that by the start of this. I've been invited on 2 podcasts which have been done and recorded and aired. I've been invited to another one this week to do it, and then I've now been approached by the YPM magazine to do an article on me, and I've got an interview on Thursday of this coming week. So that's my brand, if you've not seen it. Thought I'd put it up there. Yep. And then so I'll go through some of the deals. So this is the first deal. So it was sourced off-market from an agent that I was working with an awful lot. It's a 4-bed Victorian terrace. It's right in the centre of town, near to the bus station. So perfect place to get a HMO. It was dilapidated and underinvested. It was tired. The guy had stopped putting money into it, and he was empty. He couldn't rent it. So I refurbished it and developed it into a 6-bed HMO. And finished to a high standard. I knew if I did a high standard in that area, it would really attract the clientele. In fact, when I advertised this, I really had to shut down the spare rooms. They were queuing around the door. People were leaving their 6-month rentals just to come into this place. Refinanced it and drew everything out. So this is what it looked like in the first place. Roof had come in at one part. It looks as though it had been some sort of shared house at some point, but it didn't have a license. And that's how I finished it off. So really good, funky place to live. Financials, I bought it with all the costs, $309,000. Refurbished cost was $45,000. So all the money invested, $356,000. Revaluation has been $425,000. So I've got $37,000 left in there. It gives me a net monthly income of $1,745. So the return on investment is 55.8. And I don't think I'll have many voids in that property. This is another one, different side of the spectrum. So this was sourced off market from a landlord letter. 3-bed Victorian property. Like Steve, I like my Victorian houses. Located on the outskirts of town this time, but near to a commercial district. Reasonable condition. It'd been a single let, but it wasn't that I was after. It's what I could do with it. Layout, I could make it into a 5-bed HMO. Key thing here, again, to add value, was that I knew Article 4 was coming in August. So I knew the minute Article 4 came in, the value would go up. So that was the reason to buy it. Refinanced, refurbished. That's what it looked like in the first place, and that's what it looks like now and fully letted. Financials on on this one: bought with costs $79,000, refurbished cost $47,000, revaluation $147,000, 17 left in. So it gives me a great monthly income, good, and a return on investment 97.7%. Quickly on the last one, it's a source from an agent. So this is one I'd been working with quite closely. 4-bedroom terrace. So it was on Rightmove. This 4-bedroom terrace, a deceased estate, really old-fashioned. It's over 4 floors, a huge cellar. So again, that's what I'm thinking. I can do something with this. So 6-bed with a flat underneath. This is where I did it on a purchase, a bridging loan. And this was really good property, and I didn't have the cash at the time, so I needed to get the bridging, and I pulled out my second charge. So that's what it was bought like, and it's in the refurbished stage at this moment in time. It is. Financials, 126 as a bought. Refurbished costs are slightly higher because of the seller needing doing. Money left in 45, but it's a 50% return on investment and 2,000 a month, so good income earner. So my results. I raised $360,000 in investor money. Cash release, $275 out of my single let. Vendor finance, I've agreed $160,000. Properties I've purchased is 7. I've options agreed on 1. Properties I've converted is 1. And the total property value is £2,728,000. Income per year, £170,000, which is... I'm really pleased with that. The equity in the properties is £678,000. And the cash invested is 487. Now, most of that is in the last two, so refinancing and there's an option of a title split as well. We'll suck some of that out. But the equity I've generated by adding value is currently coming out at about 200,000, 190,000. Top tips. Simon says trust the process, and a lot of the other people have said trust the process. And one thing I can tell you is from my experience of getting everything wrong, what the process does is it gives you a safety net, it gives you a little bubble, it gives you that path through all the problems that you could hit, and that's what it truly does. And I can see that, I can see how that does. And the only thing that you're missing then is the mindset. If you have the mindset and follow that process, and that's the best way I can describe the trust the process scenario, is that it's a pathway through, weaving through all the trouble things that can happen. And if you then switch on your mindset, it can happen, it will happen. Get obsessed. I'm obsessed. I'm 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm midnight at night, every day. This has been and was an obsession for me. I have a family, I wanted to generate income, and I needed to look after them, and it was important to me. So I got obsessed, and that's the only thing. Work hard and get obsessed with what you're going to do. Fill every working hour with determined to actually achieve your goals. I've put here, don't look at the golden deal and get nothing. Look for a deal. So make sure you know what a deal is and go for it and get it, but not necessarily just wait for that golden, suddenly shiny thing. Some of them, you get your money all back out. Some of you don't. But the other side of the coin, I was going to say, don't panic and buy badly. There's been some people I've talked and helped in the room this year where they were feeling the pressure of the time and panicking and potentially could have bought a bad deal. And one of them is just go back over the process and then work through it, because there'll be something missing in that process that they've either forgetting or not quite got in line. It might have been mindset, but just go back. Don't go for a bad deal. Don't do it on your own. For years, I've done everything on my own, and I came here for education, but what I've really found is a bunch of people that is incredible. I worked in corporate worlds where everybody was looking after themselves, trying to climb up a ladder, and actually to be here today and to work with you guys, with everybody in the room that are solely just there to help everybody else, it's truly inspiring. It really is. I know a lot of people have said that, but it is. It's our own little magic that we made. And the final thing is, some things in my life has made me realize that time is important, and it's the most precious commodity. So friends, family, achievements is definitely the most important thing that you should do. Thanks to Simon and the PIN team for the process. I did look at other training organisations, but I knew straight away this was the one for me. Rob McFall, my mentor, Gilly Barlow, my coach, all my buddy callers that have constantly had to deal with me rescheduling all the time, my group of property best friends that are in the room, and the whole of MM25 group. What next for me? I'm just going to enjoy growing Saltbox Living to make it a market leader in producing high-quality co-living spaces. I'm going to open, with a little commercial property thing I did, I'm going to open a little co-working space. That's what I intend to do. And then I've had quite a few people ask me for coaching and mentoring, which really excites me. Helping people and adding value to people's lives is another real passion of mine as well. So if you didn't catch it before, I thought I'd finish with my little band. Thank you very much.